Welcome to Mangaroos. Today we will discuss Onna no Sono no Hoshi. It could be translated into English as Hoshi of the Girls' Garden or the Star of the Girls' Garden because Hoshi means star. It's by Yama, Wayama. Meet our hero, Mr. Hoshi, the center of the story. He's a second-year homeroom/literature teacher at Narimori Girls High. That would be a junior in the U.S. system because they only have 3 years in Japanese high school. He is very stoic. He's got a poker face. He's got a mandarin collar shirt, also known as a standing collar, which I found out you say as sutando kara. But yeah, apparently it's a standing collar, but also referred to as a mandarin collar shirt. So anyway, that's his fashion choice. It's a very distinctive fashion choice. And later you find out that not only... So I've read all 3 volumes, just full disclosure. But I only asked you to read volume 1. Sorry, I went wild and read them all. But you find out that not only is he surrounded by women in his work life, but also in his private life. He is surrounded by women. He has 3 older sisters. Whoa. He's married to a woman. And he's got...
Spoiler alert!
Yeah, spoiler alert. He's married
kind of
to a woman.
blowing my mind right here.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I know. The moment you find out that teachers have private lives and they have, like, families.
Always
and
awkward
he has a little girl.
Yeah, so that was the big... wow, we're getting right into it here.
That's the
big cliffhanger at the
end.
The
big revelation. That's a big cliffhanger.
On the last page, I was like, I had to reread that. I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, but I'm also pretty sure that's Kobayashi Sensei just kind of pulling that girl's leg, just like making stuff up. But yeah.
No, he actually has a daughter. He actually has a daughter.
Oh,
sorry,
my
I'm sorry,
blown.
I didn't... Spoiler alert. This is not really a big plot point though, actually. But I mean, it's a big plot point because so like he's a male teacher at an all-girls school. So because of that, every male teacher is kind of a star at all-girls school. I went to an all-girls high school for 2 years, and like I know that this is very true even in the U.S. So.
Wow, I have so many questions.
Yeah.
Should we introduce ourselves? This is my catchphrase that I say at the start of every episode.
Please I'm Alex, and please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jason.
And I'm Mark, and I went to an all-boys school.
Oh, really? For all the years?
No, I just made that part up. But
okay.
I can imagine what it would be like to go to an all-boys
Jason,
school.
did you go? You didn't go to an all-boys or all-girls. You didn't go to an all-girls
school. Did you go to all-girls school?
Every school I went to had all of the genders, and but I was told once by a teacher in high school that I was too cool for school, and I stopped going the next day. I was like, all right.
Oh no!
Then they had to have an intervention to get you back.
They're like, wait, please come back. Don't take that literally. I was told that, and I was like, I know I'm supposed to be offended by that, but that's actually a pretty cool thing to be told by.
I would take that as the highest form of compliment.
Yeah, I think that was the moment I peaked.
No, I also went to a fully gendered school with all spectrums.
I mean, I did that too for a part of my career, but the thing is I just loved moving around so much because of my dad's job, but I guess it wasn't a love of my own.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. It's like you got to reinvent yourself at each new stop.
Yeah, I got to reinvent myself every 2 years.
Alex, were you a military kid?
No, my dad was just an entrepreneur, so he kept starting companies and then selling the companies.
Serial entrepreneur.
Were they like
entrepreneur?
Did the companies end in flames and like the mistrust of the local community?
Them.
You had to pick up stakes. Oh, okay.
Well, one of them ended in flames. So when I went to the all-girls school, the last part of that ended in flames. And then there was a not great period of his employment. But anyway, this is not a podcast about my father's employment history.
Although that is an important side plot to the second volume of Onna no Hoshi. No, what is it? Onna no Sono no Hoshi.
Onna no. There's a lot of no's happening there.
There's a lot of no's.
Onna no Sono.
Can I just call it
the
the story of Hoshi?
The story of Hoshi. He's a guy.
Actually, can I ask? I never found out whether or not this has been translated. Does this manga exist in English officially? No, it doesn't look like.
Is it too new?
I looked it up and it didn't seem to be in English yet, but I feel like it would be in English eventually, just because it got a lot of awards.
Oh, it's 2020, yeah, and it's Feel Young. New. Oh, okay, yeah. And Feel Young doesn't do a lot of stuff in English as well,
I'm assuming no.
Mm.
And a lot of the humor in this one, I think, might be. Obviously, everything is translatable. I wouldn't say that it would be "quote unquote" hard to translate, but whoever you would want a very skilled localizer on this one because there's so much subtlety.
There's a lot of nuance.
Yeah, in the comment.
Like just the first chapter, I had to go through it twice to fully understand every great part of the first chapter. Anyway, sorry, I should just get into the questions first because we're just going to talk about nothing if we continue like this. So.
Well, I have more questions about your dad's businesses if we run out of stuff to talk about with the manga.
We'll save them for chapter 5 of these questions.
Yeah, I'll save that for. So, overall, what did you think? Are you into it? Would you read more? Is it not really for you, Mark?
Okay, that's a great question. At first, not at all. When I picked this up, for me, it started off as a great love story because I went to my favorite manga shop down the street, and I said, "Do you have this?" And they said no. So I was like, "Oh, great! I'm gonna have to try a bigger boat." So I went to the one shop that never lets me down, and they had it, sure enough. And the guy who was there was an absolute prince, and he was just telling me about. I was like, well, I hope you're not after volume 3 because that's just flying off the shelves. You can't keep them in stock, so you're gonna have to buy that on digital. And I was like, well, no, I just want volume 1. They said, why would you want volume 1? That came out 2 years ago. And I was like, yeah, I'm just starting into it. And he's like, okay, well, here you go. And he showed me where it was, and he said, this author is really blowing up right now. They're very popular, and this is why it's good and whatnot. So. Clearly causing some buzz in the literature world, at least in that tiny corner of the literature world. So I was very excited to get into it. And then when I did crack it open, I realized that maybe this book wasn't for me, especially at the beginning with the A Shiritori part, which I thought, this is okay, but maybe this isn't the kind of thing that I really want to spend, a couple hours of my life really digging into. But because I knew you picked it, there must be some magic in it. So I pressed on, which I would have done anyway, even if there had never been any magic. But I'm very happy to say that I found my magic right around the time that Hoshi sensei and his class started keeping Setsuko, the dog. And then they were real jerk faces, kind of, and they drew the eyebrows on the dog. And then that's all well and good. Sure, that happens all the time. But the next day, when he comes into the classroom and he can't find Setsuko, and he's freaking out because the dog is gone, and I'm like, oh, I can totally relate to that. I can imagine, just come home.
Mark notoriously has lost so many dogs.
Your kids are gone. It's like, where are my children? I don't know. And then he finds, was it Nakamura Sensei, the teacher that everyone is really kind of talking bad about, right? And I think we've all experienced teachers like this where, they're not exactly popular with the kids. Everyone's like, why are they here? And then they have this kind of bonding moment where it turns out that the only friend that Nakamura Sensei really has at the entire school is the dog Setsuko, and he really pours a lot of love and affection into that dog because he's the only living being that will look him in the eyes. And then just kind of sitting there on the side of the stoop. I don't know what else to call it.
Nakamura Sensei is built up as this really sketchy dude who comes to work every day smelling like alcohol. And, he talks in this mumbly way that nobody can understand. So you're expecting him to be this really sketchy dude. And then you finally meet him and it's like, oh, he's actually just kind of a lonely guy.
Yeah.
And then this dog like unlocks his heart, and I was just like, oh man, that really is like such a kind of tender human moment that you're not really expecting, right?
Yeah, it grabbed me in a way that something like Kimetsu could never really do. Like it just pulls you in a different way. And I laughed out loud when, they spend about 2 or 3 pages washing Setsuko, and then they don't even get the eyebrows off the poor dog. That was funny enough. And then they're having a little argument about who is going to walk the dog, which is cute and endearing. And that's when I said, you know what? I think I am into this. And that's when I was ready. I was ready to have my conversation right then.
That's good. I'm glad it wasn't a slog through the entire time.
It was a slow burn, but once it got going, and then from there on to the Eternal Kaoru stuff, I was like, oh yeah, I can totally get into this. Because I think what Wayama Sensei does really well is that she kind of brings her personal experience. I think she puts a lot of herself into the story. I don't really know. I'm just imagining, but I feel like her struggles or her personal experiences, maybe when she was, just first getting out drawing comics and whatnot, reminds me of my 3rd and 4th grade years in elementary school when me and my friends, we would draw comics and then we would sell them to our little brothers for pennies on the dollar, and make them buy them from us. But how hard it was to come up with new ideas for stories and whatnot, and this is how it all kind of like jumbles together and whatnot. But I
just combine every good idea you've ever encountered in other stories.
I mean, that's how it works.
Yeah.
All of them.
It was great. I don't know. It warmed my heart. Jason, what do you think?
Okay, so I hadn't heard of this manga when Alex recommended it, so I had no idea what to expect. I had a heck of a time finding Volume 1. As you said, it's very popular these days. I luckily found it at my local book off, or the book off that I most frequently go to, let's say. And I had a little bit of a doki doki panic because at this book off, the manga is divided into like men's manga, and then women's manga is over here, and there's a special section in the women's manga that's labeled BL and ladies, and I'm like, I don't know what ladies manga means, but I know what BL means, and that's where this one was located. So I was like, what is Alex getting?
It is interesting because it's not actually BL, but she has dabbled, but
I could see it.
Yeah.
So then I grabbed this kind of very evocative pink cover with this very pretty young man on it.
Yeah.
And I'm reading it on the train, and I'm like, oh, well, let's see what this is all about.
You didn't opt for a book cover?
I never opt for a book cover because I'm like,
oh my gosh,
let your freak flag fly.
Okay.
Let the people on the train experience it with me. And I was on board from basically as soon. So the first chapter starts with these students doing shiritori, which is like the thing where you start a new word with the last letter of the last word, and just like this amazing subtle bit of character building where it's so obviously Hoshi sensei that's been drawn on this piece of paper, right? And he just does not get it. And I'm like, I love it because he clearly positions himself as like this intelligent, like capable dude that all the other teachers look up to, and he's like, what could this drawing possibly represent? And it's just like this amazing bit of comedy where it's like the audience is in on the joke, but the main character isn't. And that's really hard to execute in any medium. And the fact that it was done so well, I was like, okay, what else is going on here? I read this whole volume in one sitting, which I very, very rarely do. And every single chapter, except for the last one, had me doing that thing where I'm on the train trying really hard not to laugh out loud, but I'm just like kind of quivering with laughter because it's like I want to laugh, but I don't want people to see me on the train laughing. So I love the subtle characterization, the reaction shots in some of the stories, like the way the characters react. And what I love the most about it is that the people in this story felt so real. Like, it's a comedy manga, but like it's never over the top. It's never like unbelievable scenarios. Everything about it is something that you can totally imagine happening in real life. It totally got me. And yeah, definitely planning to read the rest of it when I can find the time.
Yeah, I'm glad that you appreciated the subtlety, because I mean it's a kind of humor that I feel like it's not for everyone. I recognize. Like you have to be kind of into it. Like there's just little moments like when Kobayashi is plopping down in his chair and he goes into the chair vigorously, but he ends up bashing against the wall, and he's like, oh, that was too much. Like, it's like little moments like that where you're like, okay, I know who this guy is, and how he only eats like Calorie Mate for lunch. Like,
people like that in my life.
You've seen that guy. You've hung out with that guy.
Yeah. Like he's a very like simple man, but he's got his like quirks. I don't know. I really like that. This is kind of a question leading off of that is what do you think is unique in Wayama's storytelling or not unique? Do you want to go first, Jason?
That's a great question. I don't know if it's totally unique, but I think it's executed really well, and it's something I don't see everywhere. Is like there's these little tiny flights of fancy that you sometimes get coming from different characters that just like it reveals just a little bit about the way that they think, and it's totally surprising when it happens because so much of the manga is like extremely down to earth. Even the art is like really realistic. It's capturing this really like mundane day-to-day kind of vibe. But then, like, the clearest example, right, is just, I think it is Kobayashi Sensei imagining Hoshi Sensei's, like, T-shirt factory.
Yeah, when he wakes up in the oxygen capsule and is, like, going through, like, the Jetsons type thing.
And it's just, like, these very, like, classic 1950s style robots. Have you ever had that
where you cannot fathom what your coworker's personal life might be like because they're just, like, such a strange person?
Exactly. But another example of that is when Kobayashi Sensei is like relating the story of like why he has a fear of dogs, and then at the end of the story Hoshi Sensei is like, I think you just have a fear of old men, and it's like, oh yeah. Like, and it's just like this one-off little throwaway line, and it's those little moments that make it come alive for me, because it really treads this line between like almost like boring minutia of life, but then it's sprinkled with these little ridiculous observations from the characters that just really pop. And so I guess for me that was the most unique or the most exciting thing. What about you, Mark?
I think it's, for me, definitely the flights of fancy were absolutely wonderful, and I love how there's really no warning sign that you are now in fantasy zone. Right. It just happens all of a sudden, the next panel, and you're in a fantasy world. But I think what really stood out to me about Wayama's storytelling, the thing that I felt like, where she could really make her mark, is her attention to detail and the characterization of her characters, the way that she builds out their stories. Like, for me, it was very obvious that Kobayashi Sensei exists to bring out Hoshi Sensei. Like, really, she's digging into this world of this guy who is very different than what he believes himself to be, and he's a center character, and I think they'll probably get into that in volume 2 and volume 3 and whatnot. There's volumes to be written about this guy, and she could have just left it at that, right? Like, Kobayashi Sensei could have just been a much more flat, one-dimensional character, but instead, just like you've already mentioned, she puts in all these little episodes where you just found out a little bit more about this guy.
He's like a foil for Hoshi.
He is, but there's so many of those throughout the series. Like, just starting off with Kagawa-san, who draws the Hoshi Sensei that no one else can understand, and then giving little windows, little slivers into the ecosystem that's going on in this school, and all these the teachers that pop up for just like one frame or 2 frames, and you feel like, oh, they might be coming back later on in the story. She drops just enough hints to make you want to know more about the world, And I think that is the mark of a successful storyteller.
Yeah.
Totally agree. I also want to say, just like, the dialogue feels so realistic.
Yeah.
The way it's written is exactly how people talk, down to like even just nailing kind of the inane ways that high school girls will sometimes kind of repeat each other. Like,
yes.
like one girl will say, inu, it's a dog. And then the other ones will be like, inu-jang. And then one of them's like, cho inu-jang. And it's like, that's exactly how girls of that age would talk in this situation. Yeah. Like, and I want to say, like, one thing that really, really impressed me about this manga is, like, it's a comedy manga set in an all-girls high school, which, when you hear that description about a manga, immediately, like, your creepy vibes radar goes up, like, uh-oh, what's going to happen here? Nothing cringe happens.
Yeah, it's wholesome.
It's super wholesome. All of the characters are treated with so much respect, and I love how it's actually the girls, the students, who kind of like have the upper hand in terms of, I don't know, like the morality of the story, of like which characters are kind of looking down on which other characters with like kind of pity. It definitely feels like the students are like the ones kind of not in charge, but like it almost feels that way, but yeah, just really nicely done.
The students so if you want to continue reading more, volume 2 is more the student side. So you get to see more of like what the students are like, and like what they desire, and like how they live their lives. So if you're curious, volume 2 is more about the students. And then in 3, there's a bit more of the students, and then also a bit more of the teachers.
No, I was on a little trip with my family out of town, and I did happen to go by a bookstore, and I saw a giant pop-up display for volume 3 of this somewhere, and it looked like volume 3. Who is it? Was it Tori?
Oh yeah, it has Tori on the cover.
Has Tori on the cover? Yeah. It looked like she was gonna come back in a big way in volume 3, and it made me think that
she's a character. Like, you get to know those students more, which I think was a really good move of like the story. Yeah,
I'm trying to think of what I would want from future volumes of this. Like, in one sense, I can imagine every volume being about Hoshi Sensei, and that being really satisfying and fun, and like getting to know more about him. But it also sets up, like you said, this world of like potentially really interesting characters, because again, each of them have like the potential to be such deep, complex characters. We get to see just a little tiny bit of each of them, right?
Yeah.
So it's fun to imagine, like, well, what if we had a whole story just about Kobayashi Sensei, or just about one of the students, or that's cool. But yeah, kind of putting a timestamp on this episode, I guess. But honestly, every bookstore I go to recently has volume 3 of this like prominently displayed. So clearly, I mean, it's
the one that has the little DVD with the anime in it. So I would want that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I would want that. And it's also voiced by, I think Kobayashi is maybe voiced by Miyano Mamoru, who's like very popular with the girls. He's a voice actor who does a lot of like very like sexy, male voice.
Is Kobayashi? Can I ask? Is he supposed to be like sexy or a cool guy?
The thing is that he's kind of like a loser.
He's like, a total. To me, he was
like, yeah. So I know, and it's like, and it's funny because he looks like he would be more like, I don't know, interesting. Like if you were a girl, like, right, he would look like the more handsome choice. But actually, all the girl students think he's a loser.
He's a total Pop-Tart character. You bite him into once and maybe it tastes good, but after that, like, never again. Like, if you had to eat Kobayashi for the rest of your life, you're gonna get tired of him. That's going nowhere.
There's a really sad extra in volume 3 because each volume you get a little snippet of Kobayashi's day off. And in a volume 3, in volume 3, he's doing a Zoom call with his brother and his niece, and he's like, and at the end of the call, he's like, "Don't leave me here alone." It's so sad.
Okay, but also like Kobayashi Sensei, when he was on his day off, the slice of life at the very end of volume 1, that was totally me about 10 years ago.
Oh really?
And
that's
really?
so sad.
Fascinating.
I'm so glad to be.
I'm glad you got a life.
There's help on the other side.
There's help on the other side.
You just keep
I don't know.
going.
Is Kobayashi? I don't know if I would say he's a loser. He's just like he's absolutely a himbo, right?
Okay, he's kind of like I guess
he is a himbo, but
like
also,
he's not a bad dude. He's just
not a
kind
bad
of
dude.
a little. He's a little vapid. He's a little
but
empty.
he's not the star of the show.
He's not the star.
No, but I think there's probably at the end of this, like, if you keep characterizing him the way that he could have his own spin-off series, but never never in the same way that Hoshi Sensei. Because the thing about Hoshi Sensei is that Hoshi Sensei actually is a really cool, fun, and engaging, smart, clever dude, but he represses all that so much into where he's just basically a jerk face to everyone and the way that he interacts with people.
I mean, he's pretty kind. Like later, you also see a lot of his kindness towards his students in later volumes. So
okay. Well, I feel like he's got a lot of good stuff.
Cold.
Yeah, he comes off as cold, like icy cold. Like I called him Mr. Icicle when I was reading this thing, but I felt like there was so much. Like they give you these when Kobayashi Sensei finally convinces him to go
drinking.
Well, they just go out for dinner, right? And he's like, I'm not gonna drink. And then it's like, give me some tomato juice. 1, who drinks tomato juice? And then 2, they bring him the tomato highball. And I know this is gonna be one of your questions. So I'm just gonna go ahead and answer it. Who's your favorite teacher in the school and why? Okay. My favorite teacher is tomato highball Hoshi Sensei, because he transforms into a completely different person. And you know that this loving, caring person who is awesome and you really want to be with and know more about, you just want to spend time with and be this dude's friend, this is really the person that's carrying the story, but he's presented so much differently in just that one chapter than he is throughout the rest of the book, so it makes you fascinating to want to learn more.
Okay, so quick question. If, in the Onna no Sono no Hoshi fighting game, Are Hoshi Sensei and Tomato Highball Hoshi Sensei like separate selectable characters?
Totally two different characters. It's not the same character.
So it's like Ryu and Evil Ryu. They're not just like palette swaps. They're actually like separate.
Well, no, they're still palette swaps.
Yeah,
but the movesets are the same.
Color, right?
One is not stronger than the other.
Okay, but they're distinct. That's really cool.
They're two different choosable characters.
I like that. I never thought about that.
So, Jason, who's your favorite teacher? Sorry, we're going so much away from my questions. Maybe they weren't good questions.
They're great questions.
They're great questions. It's really tempting to say Hoshi Sensei just because we get to see so much more of him than we do of everyone else. But gosh, like I'm trying to imagine reading this volume without Kobayashi Sensei in it, and it just becomes a much less well-rounded piece, right? Like I think the moments that made me laugh the most were all involving Kobayashi Sensei, specifically when the one student is showing them Eternal Kaoru, her manga, and like just watching their reactions and like
together
how Kobayashi Sensei is trying to like offer encouragement, but like kind of like everyone's like reading right through him and like your comments are totally fake, bro. Like it's just I don't know.
He can't summon the strength. Oh my gosh. Because I think it's because he doesn't have it in him, man. He's too much of a Pop-Tart.
He's totally he's like a milquetoast kind of dude, and I can't quite tell if he has like a really inflated sense of himself or if he's just comes across that way. And also,
I think he comes across that way, but this
he definitely comes across that way.
But I also think that this is like the way Wayama sets up the school. I think each character thinks that they are the archetype of what a person should be like. Like this is normal, and each person's version of normal is clearly not normal, and that's what makes the entire universe work so well.
Yeah, I mean, they're all sort of strange people.
But they all appear to be completely normal at first. So talking about the teachers, I totally agree with you. Like each of them represents what they think is like, I guess, the archetypal, good teacher. But I was really impressed with the way the students are depicted, because I don't know if you remember being at that age or like what your friends were like at that age, but like being a high school student is very close to just being an insane person in public. Like, you're just like this unrestrained force of like weird creative energy. You don't quite know how to conduct yourself, right? And like, you get to see that in the manga, but also in the last chapter, the one student who's like observing Hoshi Sensei. She's basically a stalker, but she's like, I'm just doing this because it's a hobby. It's just something I do. And it's such a bizarre way to behave, but it's presented as like, this is just who this person is.
I love that she's a stalker, but she's so critical of him as well.
Like, does she want him to do
dings
better?
at him. There's like dings at him at every observation.
Oh my gosh! But then when she just like brings in the bazooka into the school, like that's okay. I mean, as
she
a
actually
US
does
citizen,
too.
I can tell you, you are not gonna get past the metal detectors at the front door.
No, not in the U.S. No, you can't bring that bazooka to school, but in Japan, you can.
You can bring your bazookas to school, and it's okay. They don't have those kinds of issues here.
I really want to get to this question. What advice would you have given to the student in Chapter 3 regarding Eternal Kaoru? Just because I want to talk about it.
So, I'm tempted to say it's perfect, it's beautiful, keep it exactly as it is, because, reading the chapter about Eternal Kaoru, I came away from it reading like, I really want to read more of this. I just want to see where this story goes. I don't know, Mark, you probably have more useful advice than that.
Okay, so for those of you listening at home who haven't read the book yet, Eternal Kaoru, I think, represents the heart of the manga. I mean, this is like when Volume 1 really finds its stride. If you have not gotten on board the train that is Onna no Sono no Hoshi at this point, then you are never going to leave the station. But if you have bought your ticket, you've swiped your Suica or Pasmo or Kitaka if you're coming from Hokkaido, whatever, and you're on board this ride, then you are going to absolutely love the Eternal Kaoru segment of this story. I think it's awesome how this girl comes in, Matsuoka-san, and she's like, look, I just happened to heard this this offhand conversation that you, Hoshi Sensei, were having with Kobayashi Sensei. You were in a manga club in college. You drew some manga. Maybe you can give me some advice, because I mean, how many of us have been in similar situations where you really look up?
I've been exactly that situation.
Exactly, right? Like, here's some teachers. Maybe they'll give you some advice, and then she just like breaks out the case, and she's got this full-on thing going on.
Yeah,
and it's like name after name, and they start going through and. It would be so easy to just be like, as a teacher, to nope out of that and be like, just leave it.
I don't want to see your dumb work.
Don't want to see your dumb work. Well, that you might be taking a step too far, right? Like, mixing church and state. You should probably.
It's like, can you like proofread my fan fiction? It's like,
exactly right. Like, this is an extracurricular activity. You don't have to go that far, but Hoshi Sensei does. He's like, wait a second, let me see what you got here. And you can see Kobayashi is like putting up the nope signals all the way, but no, Hoshi Sensei's like, we're gonna do this and we're gonna look at it together. And then they start to read the manga. You know what? It reminded me of, and I don't know if you guys are into this, but gag manga Biori, which is one of my favorite gag mangas from maybe 20 years ago or so. But it's really kind of crudely drawn, but the jokes are basically on this level. Imagine an entire manga volume just filled with these random turns of events. Absurdity, really. It's just absolutely absurd. Like when the main character is just rounding the corner and she hits that boy and then he dies and she takes the house.
She still has the bread in her mouth, though.
Still has the bread in her mouth.
I love that. Yeah, she still has the bread.
Like, that's awesome. But I was gonna say the advice that I would give to Matsuoka-san for making Eternal Kaoru better is that clearly, if her characters are weak enough that if they get hit by a person in a wheelchair that they die, then her move system in her universe isn't developed enough yet, and she needs to spend more time developing ways to make her characters stronger so that they don't die the first time they get bumped by another character.
Can we? Okay, I'm just sort of rereading this now, and I just want to kind of quickly recap. So in the space of a few pages, we have a girl who runs into a guy. He dies.
He dies.
And then the cops tell her it's okay. Keep going. Don't worry about it.
Just
she gets to school. and there's some sort of death game
There's
happening.
a death game starting. Yeah.
And then another kid dies on like the second page. She goes home. She's real sad about that. And she finds out that she was a twin and that her twin, like...
A secret twin. She has a secret
twin. There's a secret twin that she didn't realize that existed. Then she gets amnesia.
Yeah.
And like, it's just everything happens. And... It's hard for me not to say like just keep, and then she explains going to the teachers like the next thing that's going to happen is
she's going to go to Africa.
She's going to go to Africa because then she'll be able to like live in the open savannah and just study the animals that she loves or whatever. And it's like
the Lion King.
So in order to answer this question, it's like, who am I in this scenario? Am I her teacher? Am I her friend? Am I just some random dude? Because I think
just a reader, as a reader of Eternal Kaoru who wants it to do well. That's how I
would say follow your heart, because I'm 100% on board. I'm more intrigued by this opening chapter than I was of like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, for example. I think Eternal Kaoru is better than JoJo.
I think the secret sister theme was good. I just was a bit bummed when the sister died immediately. I feel like that could have gone.
But if I was her teacher, I would simply say like, hey, maybe don't draw the manga when you're in class. You know, give this creation the full attention it deserves.
Except that, like, I feel like that kind of advice is like the same advice as when he gives in the last chapter his stalker, like, try harder.
Keep stalking.
She's like, try harder at stalking.
I've got to try harder. I gotta be better at stalking.
I feel like
I don't know.
She would
Eternal Kaoru was that was. You're right, Mark. That's really the make or break point. Like if you're not into that, you're not going to enjoy this manga. But like, I enjoyed it so much that I just immediately texted both of you. I just texted the words Eternal Kaoru because I was like, I just want more. I was so
I would
dying
buy a
on
T-shirt with just Eternal Kaoru on it.
No, totally. I want Eternal Kaoru merchandise. I want to be like. We should just have our own Eternal Kaoru podcast. We go panel by panel.
Oh my gosh!
I also liked how that chapter, like it just outlines how like cringy teens are, like how terrible like teens are at making stories.
just the complete lack of self-awareness. Like, can you imagine how she's going to feel, even like 5 years later when she remembers? Oh my God, I showed this to my teacher. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's so painfully accurate. Like, I know exactly how that feels.
But what did you think about Hoshi Sensei's advice when he's like, give me 5 minutes and then I'm gonna give you the story arc, and then he, like, what did you guys think of that? Is that the way that you would have taken it?
I think that Hoshi's he came from a good place because he also knows what it's like to be awkward, but his awkwardness even extended into college, as we find out in that
flashback
chapter.
Story.
The flashback where everyone in the manga club has started dating, and he's just in the corner, and then he writes his 100-page manga just out of spite.
We've all been there. Come on.
And then of course Kobayashi Sensei is so impressed by the fact that he wrote 100 pages. He's like,
it's impressive.
That's hard to do.
But I mean, when you're a college student who has a lot of pent up feelings, then that's what happens.
This is literally what I did when I was in first year of college. I didn't do 100 pages, but I did something like 30 pages of comic art. Like, I wouldn't call it manga because it was comics, right? Mm-hmm. And then I showed it to... I've never revealed this ever. This is an exclusive, Mangaroos exclusive. I showed it to my girlfriend at the time. I was like, hey, what do you think about this? And she looked at it. She's like, the art's cool. I like it, but this is clearly just you working out your feelings about your ex-girlfriend. And I was like,
oh no. Saw right through that.
Somehow I had not realized that. And so simultaneously she destroyed my dream of that particular comic that I was working on, but also made me had to unpack all of this psychic trauma that I didn't even realize I had.
That was your eternal Jason.
That was
eternal Jason.
Eternal Jason. So
next thing you knew, you had a one-way ticket to the African savannah.
After that, I spent the next semester in Africa.
Okay.
It was a great turning point. So no, but it's just. The way we just walk back through every moment of that chapter, right? It shows you how there's just all these tiny little moments in this manga that are they're so full of content. It's like one panel. You just go back and unpack it. There's so much happening there.
Bursting
it's
with
really
flavor.
Nicely done. Yeah, it really is. It's really great.
I wanna ask. So how was this manga like resonating with your experiences? Whether in Japan, I don't know if you taught in a high school or a similar setting ever, or if this like resonated with something in your school days. Like definitely when I was at the girls' school, like we had a world religions teacher who was like pretty buff. He was like pretty like shaggy, like rugged, and he was world religion, so like
it's so perfect.
We were all like, oh my god, he's so mysterious, and like he knows how to meditate. So we would all be like, yeah, we'd all be like switching like information, like oh, I saw him in the gym the other day, and it was like this or that.
He was just kind of meditating away.
Yeah, he was just like meditating, and it was amazing. Like. I don't know. Have you had that experience? Is it too personal to ask? Were you?
No. I think this is a good question. And I thought of two teachers who had a huge impact on my life. And one was a Mr. B and the other was a Mr. J. But I remember when Mr. B came to our school, it was in the 6th grade first, and he was going to be the new band drama teacher. We didn't have drama in the 6th grade, but we had band, like Suiso Gakubu type band, with like trumpets and all
So
that.
for a second there, I thought you were saying like band drama, like drama that was so spicy that they had to ban it.
Band drama.
Hear all the drama that we can't.
I heard there was, in my high school there was a lot of band drama. Like I think there's a lot of things happening in the band.
There's always something going on in band. That's why you have to stay out of the percussion closet. But when Mr. B came on board, everyone was super excited because it was, he was going to rehaul the band program and it was going to be amazing. But people they were comparing him to superheroes a lot, and there was a section of the class that were just adamantly convinced that he was Superman because he looked a lot like like your traditional Clark Kent type character with like the really square jaw and like that kind of haircut and whatnot, and I don't know, it brought me back to that to read this manga and then think about that question. But and really this guy, he had a huge impact on my life, not only because I got so deeply into band. I ended up playing percussion all through high school, and then got to do some cool stuff with that. But also he was the drama teacher, and we did plays each year, and I got to be really, really involved with that. So I got to hang out with him, during school and then after school and whatnot. And he would take out people to eat, and then we would go and play Pac-Man at.
Pac-Man?
There's more to this story than meets the eye.
Was there like a local pizza joint?
There was a pizza joint. And we
oh
would
my
go
god!
And play Pac-Man after school.
It's very idyllic.
Yeah, it was like your idyllic, like wholesome, like teacher-student relationship, and and like that's the kind of stuff that you kind of take for granted at the time. But looking back, like what other teachers did that? Like how many people would drive us around, just because you have an hour in between the end of school and then play practice or whatnot? Like who's gonna take you out for dinner and whatnot? People just don't really do that. So no, I think it's awesome that these teachers basically give up a huge portion of their lives to their kids and pour so much time and energy. And for what? Like, do I ever see this person again? Not for a long time.
Mark, let's not forget that children are our most precious natural resource, right?
This is true.
So we have to invest in them. I worked in a high school for a couple of years when I first came to Japan, so definitely recognized a lot of that experience. Just like the teachers being in the teacher's room at all times, being at the beck and call of students, but also kind of, I was at a high school, so I do remember like students, especially the girls, the female students coming up to me and asking me to like just could you just say this thing, just say this one thing, And I didn't know what it was. Sometimes in English, sometimes in Japanese, it would be like some catchphrase that was popular at that time. But like I didn't know what it was. So I would basically
like
just
or something,
right? Like I did, you know, the guy from Oldori that wears like the sweater vest.
I
would do his thing toos, and I would do that, and I didn't know what it was or why it was anything, but they would ask me to do it, and I would do it, and they would just like laugh and clap and then go away, and I would be
you were being played.
I was being played, but I was like, I'm enriching these children's lives, and they're enriching. This is cultural exchange at its finest. Right. But then, like Mark said, I think I do remember like one thing that really resonated for me from the manga was how the students all come up with these weird nicknames for the teachers. Mm-hmm. Like Kobayashi Sensei is Polo Shirts Ambassador. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh God, that's so exactly what we used to do. Like we would come up with these stupid nicknames for teachers. And then I guess we thought that the teachers would never notice or like never. But then you get to see them talking about it in the teacher's room with each other, trying to figure out where these nicknames come from. And I'm just like, God, I never thought about that side of the equation, but that probably totally did happen. And just those little moments are just really slice of life, right? Yeah, that's what we mean when we say slice of life.
I feel like.
But you went to an all-girls school, like How accurate did it feel, the depictions of the students in this?
Well, like, I thought it was very accurate. I mean, like, but also knowing like Japanese girls, because I mean, I taught middle school in Japan for a bit, so I got to know that age group of girls because the third years are like basically almost to high school. But, I mean, like, obviously, American girls interact differently than Japanese girls. Yeah, for sure. So, like, just the way of communication is different. So I think that there's that. But then also, like, at the school I was at, I mean, also just, like, a lot of American schools, you can't really go freely into an office where all the teachers are. You know, like, the teachers usually have their own little, like, nook office that you can come to at, like, different hours. You can't really just like they're not really at your beck and call like in Japan. I actually looked up something about Japanese teachers because like Kobayashi, he also coaches the girls volleyball team. I think it's like mentioned but it's not really shown, but Japanese teachers just do so much for the kids, and they do so many, like in the US there are teachers who do extracurriculars on top of it, but it's not like as expected as it is in Japan. Yeah. And like I read something that the average Japanese school teacher works 123 hours overtime, and they're actually one of the most at risk of karoshi.
Oh wow.
Yeah, a month. Yeah, because apparently karoshi is defined as 80 hours a month overtime. It's just because like people just depend on teachers so much in Japan, just for everything, like sports activities, regular school, like homeroom, stuff like that.
Sure, they come in at like 7:30 in the morning, and then they have to get everything ready and whatnot. And then if you got, everyone has a club or some kind of sport that they're doing after that, so you're at least there until 6 or 7 at night afterwards. And then when you're grading papers and whatnot, that's going to be on the weekend, so that's going to put you up past 100 hours. Ooh.
Yeah. Some of the most amazing people in society, honestly, like they don't get paid nearly enough. Shout out to teachers. We here at Mangaroos love teachers.
Wholeheartedly support. This episode goes out to teachers everywhere.
Sorry, I should ask my final question. Who would you recommend read this as a wrap up? Just because we could go on for about teachers all day long. But Mark.
My answer to that was school teachers and aspiring manga artists alike. No, I do think if you are a teacher, I think this will warm your heart. I think if you are a student, it's also something that you get to get into, but especially as a teacher, anyone with teaching experience, I think this slice of life is perfect. But also I thought it was really good if you are into like the whole manga scene. And I know you mentioned that like this person has come out of the doujinshi, the self-published work industry, and I felt like there's so much inspiration that you could draw from that. And then if you also were really into that, then I figured that you could get something out of this. But yeah, Jason, who would you recommend it to?
I had a tough time with this question, but I think my answer would be, this would be the manga I recommend to my friend who comes to me and says, hey, I've never really read a manga before, but I'm interested in maybe checking something out. And it would have to be a friend who I know has really good taste in comedy and like good taste in movies and books and stuff. Like, you know how you have friends who you just like click because you have similar tastes in stuff? Mm-hmm. So it would have to be someone who I know has really similar sensibilities to me in terms of what they find funny and like what they find interesting, but maybe this could be like kind of a gateway to manga because it's so devoid of like all the tropes and all like the weird stuff that sometimes, like, if you've ever tried to recommend manga to people who don't read manga, you always have to do a lot of, no, trust me, it gets better after this, or like like I know this one weird thing happens, but stick with it. I think this doesn't have any of that. And if you can appreciate like a funny indie comedy movie, or like if you watch a lot of stand-up comedy, I just think that this is hitting on a lot of the same like observational human tendency notes. So that's the kind of person I would recommend it to.
The humor is very dry and observational. It's definitely for a certain type of person, I think, who likes like when I was reading it, I don't know if you guys ever watched like Daria.
Yeah,
it just made me think about Daria,
totally,
because like Daria's like a very Hoshi type character.
Yes,
that she like actually cares, and she like actually has all these feelings, but she's on the outside is very like
just a
like
bit of an
Hoshi.
ice queen.
You can't figure out what's going on. But anyway.
Oh wow, what a great comparison! Yes,
I didn't think about it.
This is
but
like the Daria
totally
the manga, but as like a teacher. If she grew up to become a high school teacher, which that might be interesting.
I could see that happening actually.
So how do we end this? Should I hand it off to you, Jason? You got the next week's topic.
Yeah. Okay. So
the big reveal.
Alex. The big reveal. So next week we'll be taking a look at the manga Kore o Kaite Shine. And I chose this because it's on the Kono Manga wa Sugoi list for 2023.
No.
It's like number 5 or 6.
Wow, they already have 2023 out.
Yeah, the top 10 for the men's list and the top 10 for the women's list. And this one was like number 5 or 6 on the list. And there's a bunch of other reasons I selected it as well, but I'll talk about that on the next episode. So yeah, Kore Kaite Shine. It's, I can't remember who, I don't have the stats in front of me right now, but I think it's going to be a big change. It's a drastic departure from what we've read so far, but should be an interesting discussion. So look forward to it.
Okay. Look forward to that. Even though we have to die, apparently.
Yeah, let me tell you
that and die.
The title is pretty misleading. It might not be what you expect.
Is there not as much death per capita as Eternal Kaoru? Because if there's not,
that had a lot of death, actually.
Well, I don't want to spoil anything, but as far as I can tell, no one's booking any trips to Africa in the first volume.
Okay, good.
So we'll see. Although that would be pretty interesting. But yeah. So that's next episode. I just want to say, Onna no Sono no Hoshi. So far, it's coming out at like a cadence of once per year, and I would say cadence. that this is not an underhanded compliment. That feels kind of perfect to me, because if you're reading it in real time, imagine what a big event that is. Like for me, whenever a new issue, a new volume of Yotsuba comes out, it's almost like a holiday, and. So I definitely want to read volume 2 of this one, but I'm going to wait until like, I need more of that. You know, maybe not a year, but like,
from today.
I think I would appreciate it more if I just waited a little longer to get that kind of vibe back into my life. So definitely looking forward to it at some point.
And I'm going to keep reading as well. Alex, thank you for taking me off the regular beaten path that I always find myself trotting and into a different section of the book off manga shelves.
Yeah, sorry, I made you guys go into the BL corner.
No. Great adventure.
And
I'm glad I did it.
The fact that it is in the BL corner makes me think that, maybe there's a little bit of hope for the Hoshi Kobayashi pairings out there. But
I can't believe we never even talked about that. But I totally expected that to happen.
You kind of expected parts. There's a little bit of a bromance going on there. But
yeah, there's a bromance.
It's a budding bromance in Volume 1 because clearly, like right now, they both kind of think each other are super creepy and kind of weird. But I think that they will take a shine to each other by Volume 2.
They're like kind of close in age, and they sit next to each other, and the classrooms that they manage are next to each other. So there's like a lot of
But could you imagine a guy with this? What is it? A stunned collar going out with a polo shirt?
A standing collar.
Stunned collar. I do think it's a brave choice. Hoshi Sensei, his fashion.
It did make me think of Muji at first, and then when I later learned that the girls call him Muji, like the Japanese.
I'll admit, I own one of those shirts. They were pretty popular exactly 2 years ago when this manga was out, and I sure don't wear that shirt anymore. So
no.
It was I say about that.
You should wear it with pride. Channel him.
Maybe I will now that I've read this one.
Channel your inner Hoshi Sensei. Okay.
There's
Thanks,
something,
everyone.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. We should probably wrap this up then. So,
Alex, can I ask you a question just to wrap this up? How did you find out about this series?
So I just knew of it because, so one day I was just like walking around Ikebukuro, like I do.
As you do.
And, there's like a really big Junkuro there. I don't know if you've been to it.
Of course.
Sometimes I go to the basement and I just peruse the manga. And, I saw, Wayama's like karaoke Nico or karaoke Eiko or something like that is the title, and like the art just looks very interesting.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out like I wonder like if this is BL because it did like the cover is like a Yakuza guy inviting a high school boy student to go to karaoke, and it was like, well, what happens in karaoke rooms, like let's find out. So, and it was wholesome. It was very wholesome. It was very wholesome. So when you guys asked for another like a manga, I kind of was like, oh, okay, well then I'll take this opportunity to buy a manga that I always wanted to read, and then I bought this one.
Well done.
I'm glad you did. This was a good experiment.
We are better off for having gone on this pink journey.
Yeah.
It's pink. The cover is. And he's got that pink chalk with his glasses.
Yeah, I mean the cover designs are very good. Oh, and it actually isn't Tori on the last volume. It's another student that I can't remember. Her name right now. Yeah, but anyway, she's an interesting character too. So anyway, just read and find out if you want to meet her, more of her. Then please do.
We will do.
And, yeah, I don't know how to wrap this up. You guys have some closing statements.
If you like what you've heard and you want to get in touch with us, please send us an email. You can email us at mangaroospodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you have comments, if you've read Onna no Sono no Hoshi, or if you haven't read it, or if you have thoughts on stand callers, anything that we've discussed in this episode, please do let us know. We'd love to hear from you.